Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stepping right into, well, a pressure cooker. We have a massive stack of research on the table today. Articles, commentaries, linguistic analysis. And I want to start by setting the scene, but not in a generic way. I want you to imagine the noise.
The sheer volume, right?
Yeah.
The actual sound of it all.
Exactly. We are looking at the absolute zenith of Jesus's ministry in Galilee.
Yeah.
If you look at the historical data and the narrative arc, the crowds aren't just curious anymore, they are suffocating.
That's a great word for it.
The texts describe a situation where the physical pressure of the bodies is so intense that Jesus and his disciples literally cannot find space to eat a meal. It's chaotic, it's sweaty, and it's loud.
And that physical pressure is just, it's a perfect mirror of the spiritual and political pressure that's building. We're zooming in on a single, incredibly volatile day.
A single day.
Yeah. If you look at the timeline, this is the tipping point. Up until now, the religious leaders have been, skeptical. They've been asking questions like, why does he eat with sinners? Or why doesn't he fast?
Sort of testing the boundaries.
Exactly. Probing. But today,
the gloves come off.
the sources we're analyzing today, specifically the harmonization of Matthew 12, Mark 3, and Luke 11, show a shift from that skepticism to what is essentially a conspiracy to destroy him.
It's an accusation of demonic collusion. That's the core of it. And that's the big leap. They stop asking if he's wrong and start asserting that he is actively evil.
So to navigate this, we're going to do something a bit different. We aren't just reading the story. We're going to apply what I like to call a stereoscopic approach. We have 4 biographers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they each have a distinct lens.
I love that framework because you miss so much if you just read them in isolation,
You really do.
Matthew is showing us the king. He's all about authority, legal standing, the kingdom of heaven. Mark shows us the servant. He's obsessed with the action, the cost, the sheer work of the ministry.
The sweat equity. Yeah, exactly. Then Luke gives us the perfect man, the logical, compassionate teacher who appeals to our human reason, and John. Well, John gives us the overarching theology, even if he doesn't narrate this specific event. He gives us the light versus the darkness.
So when we stack those lenses, we get a 3D image of this conflict. We've got a roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to break this day down into 4 specific movements. First, the Beelzebub controversy, the accusation itself. Second, the return of evil, which is, frankly, a terrifying psychological and spiritual warning.
It really is.
Third, the sign of Jonah, the demand for cosmic proof. And finally, the dinner party from hell the woes to the Pharisees.
Which is arguably the most blistering critique of religious hypocrisy ever recorded. It is just relentless.
It really is. So let's drop right into movement 1, the Beelzebub controversy. It starts with the catalyst. A man is brought to Jesus. Now, usually we just hear he was healed. But look at the clinical details in Matthew 12.22. What is actually wrong with this man?
It's a trifecta of hopelessness. Matthew tells us he is demon-possessed, but the physical manifestation is that he is both blind and mute. Now just pause and think about the implications of that in the first century.
No braille, no sign language interpreters, no social safety net of any kind.
Exactly. He is utterly, completely isolated. He cannot communicate his needs out to the world, and he cannot perceive the world around him. He is locked inside his own mind.
A mind which is also being oppressed.
A mind which is currently being oppressed by a demonic entity. It is a state of total darkness and total silence. Psychologically, this is absolute despair.
And the healing isn't a process. It's not, a series of therapy sessions.
It's instantaneous. One moment, darkness. The next, light. The demon is expelled, and immediately the sensory inputs turn back on. He sees the crowd, he speaks to them, and the reaction of the crowd is what triggers the explosion.
The crowd's reaction.
Yes. The Greek text uses the word existemi, which implies they were literally standing outside of themselves. They were flabbergasted, just stunned. And in that state of shock, they ask a question that is politically radioactive.
They ask, could this be the son of David?
And that's the match in the powder keg. Son of David isn't a religious nicety. It's not just a polite title. It is a revolutionary title.
It means Messiah.
It means the Messiah. It means the king who will kick out Rome and restore the throne in Jerusalem. If the mob starts believing this carpenter is the king, the current religious establishment, Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, they lose their grip on the entire nation. It's a direct threat to their power.
So the Pharisees and scribes, and Mark tells us they actually came down from Jerusalem specifically for this, like a delegation.
Yes, this wasn't an accident.
They have a problem. They are standing right there. The guy who is blind and mute, 5 minutes ago is now, I don't know, describing the color of their robes to them. They can't deny the fact of the miracle.
Right. Denial is not an option. The evidence is talking and seeing. So they have to spin it. They have to reframe it. And this is where the malice, the sheer calculated malice comes in. They attribute the miracle to the only other power source they acknowledge. This is he casts out demons by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons.
I want to stop on that word, Beelzebub. We hear in pop culture, it's associated with horror movies or heavy metal. But linguistically, this is a very specific, very dirty insult.
Oh, it's a fascinating piece of philology. I mean, it's a deliberate corruption. It traces back to the Philistine god Beelzebub.
Beelzebub, what did that mean?
It meant Prince Baal or Lord of the High Place. It was a respectable pagan deity worshipped in Ekron. But the Israelites, who were absolute masters of the derogatory pun,
right,
they changed one letter in the Hebrew. They turned Zebul into Zebub.
And Zebub means?
Flies. Lord of the Flies. It immediately implies rot, decay, carrion, filth. But it gets worse. In some rabbinic literature, there's wordplay that connects it to the word Zabal, which means dung.
So, Lord of the Dung Heap.
Exactly. They aren't just saying he has a demon. They're using the most grotesque, offensive, disgusting title they can possibly conjure. They are looking at the Spirit of God, which just liberated a man from a living hell, and calling it the Lord of Dumb.
That creates a visceral reaction. I mean, that's the ultimate blasphemy. It's hard to imagine anything more offensive.
It is.
Now, let's apply our lenses here. How does Matthew, the king lens, interpret this moment? What's his focus?
For Matthew, this is high treason. It's a legal declaration. If Jesus is the king, acting with the authority of the kingdom of heaven, then this accusation is a declaration of war against the crown. It's not a theological error. It's a rejection of his sovereignty.
It's sedition.
It is absolutely spiritual sedition.
And Mark, the servant lens, how does he frame it?
Mark gives us the raw emotional context. He tells us in Mark 3.21 that while this whole insane controversy is happening, Jesus' own family is outside trying to seize him.
They think he's lost his mind.
They literally say he is beside himself. They think he's had a mental breakdown from the pressure. So you have the servant exhausted, so busy he can't even eat, working to free people, and he's getting it from both sides. Misunderstanding from his own loved ones and malicious slander from his enemies. It just highlights the sheer cost of his service.
So Jesus responds. And he doesn't respond with rage, which he would have been entitled to. He responds with cold, hard logic. This is the Luke lens, right? The appeal to reason.
Absolutely. Luke wants us to see the brilliance of his mind. He starts with the house divided argument.
Which is just a logical checkmate.
It is. He says, every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste. Think about the premise the Pharisees are suggesting. They're suggesting that Satan is lending Jesus power to evict Satan's own agents.
Right. Which would be a terrible business model for an evil overlord.
It's suicide. Satan is evil, but Jesus never, ever suggests he's stupid. He's a strategist. If there's a civil war in hell, if Satan is actively fighting Satan, then his kingdom is already collapsing. Why on earth would he sabotage his own infrastructure?
It just completely dismantles their premise instantly. It shows how absurd it is.
It reveals it as a desperate, illogical smear.
But then he pivots to an argument that I think is even more clever. It's brilliant, actually. He turns the tables on them. He asks, and if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons cast them out?
This is such a brilliant debating tactic because we have historical records from people like Josephus that tell us Jewish exorcisms were a real thing. It happened.
They had their own exorcists.
Yes, they had traveling exorcists who used rituals, burning roots, and incantations, specifically invoking the name of Solomon sometimes, to try to remove spirits.
So Jesus is saying, hey, your guys are in this business too. What about them?
Exactly. He traps them in a massive double standard. If the act of exorcism itself is proof of demonic power, then they have just accused their own followers, their own disciples, of being sorcerers.
Which they would never do.
Of course not. But if their disciples are doing it by God's power, why is it suddenly demonic when Jesus does it? He forces them to admit, at least to themselves, that their rejection isn't based on the miracle, it's based on their personal hatred of him.
And then comes the hammer drop, the conclusion of his logic. He says, but if it is by the Spirit of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you.
And here is a beautiful, beautiful nuance between the Gospels. Matthew says, Spirit of God. That's the power source of the king. But Luke, the man, uses a phrase that should make your ears perk up. He says, if I cast out demons by the finger of God.
The finger of God. That's an Old Testament callback, isn't it? That's not just a random phrase.
Oh, it's a direct hyperlink to Exodus chapter 8, verse 19. Remember the contest between Moses and Pharaoh in Egypt? The Egyptian magicians, Jannes and Jambres, they could replicate the water turning to blood.
Right. They could keep up for a little while.
They could replicate the frogs. But when Aaron struck the dust and it turned into gnats, this act of creating life from inanimate dust, the magicians hit a wall. They couldn't do it. And they dropped their staffs and said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God.
So Luke is framing this as a new Exodus. He's saying Jesus isn't just another magician or exorcist. He holds the supreme power that overrides all human and demonic magic.
Precisely. It's a power of a different category. And if the finger of God is flicking demons away right in front of them, it means the kingdom isn't some abstract future concept. It has arrived. It is standing in the room with them.
This leads us directly into the parable of the strong man. And honestly, this image completely changes how I view the whole idea of gentle Jesus, meek and mild. This is military imagery. This is aggressive.
100%. It's an invasion plan.
Yeah.
Jesus lays out the allegory. You have a strong man, that's Satan. He's fully armed. He guards his palace. And his goods, his possessions, are in peace. They're secure.
What are the goods in this scenario? What is he guarding?
That's us. That's humanity. That's every person held in bondage. The Pharisees saw the demon-possessed man as a problem to be solved, or, a sinner to be shunned. Jesus sees him as a hostage to be rescued.
A prisoner of war.
A prisoner of war. And for Jesus to rescue the hostage, what has to happen first?
You have to take out the guard.
He says you must first bind the strong man. Then and only then can you plunder his house. So the exorcisms we see in the Gospels, they aren't random acts of kindness. They are the plundering.
They're proof of the victory.
They're the proof that the strong man has already been overpowered and bound. Jesus is walking into enemy territory, tying up the cosmic guard and walking out with the prisoners.
That phrasing, plunder his house, it's so aggressive. It really does frame salvation as a rescue mission behind enemy lines.
It does. And that's why the stakes are absolute. That's why Jesus ends this whole section with that incredibly binary statement. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters.
There's no Switzerland in this war. There's no neutral territory.
No neutrality whatsoever. You are either part of the gathering force, the kingdom's rescue mission, or you are by default actively scattering the sheep. And notice the rebuke to the Pharisees there.
Oh, yeah.
They thought they were the guardians of Israel, the shepherds. But by opposing Jesus, the true shepherd, they are actually doing the work of the wolf. They are the ones scattering.
Wow. That is a perfect segue to the second movement, the return of evil. After this intense showdown, Jesus tells a story that I think is often misunderstood. It's the story of the empty house, found in Matthew 12.
It's such a haunting parable. It's almost like a ghost story. He describes an unclean spirit leaving a man, maybe through an exorcism or maybe even through, self-discipline. The person just cleaned up their life.
Right.
And the spirit wanders through waterless places looking for rest.
Wow, waterless places? Is that significant or just a detail?
It's a very significant cultural touch point. In Jewish folklore and ancient Near Eastern thought, demons and unclean spirits were believed to inhabit the wasteland, the desert, the ruins, places devoid of life and water. It emphasizes the restlessness and homelessness of evil. It desires a body.
It's looking for a home.
Exactly. It finds no rest, so it decides, I'll go check on my old address.
And it finds the house swept and put in order.
Which, that sounds positive, right?
Yeah.
We all like a clean house. It sounds like progress has been made.
Yeah.
But the tragic, damning word in the parable is empty.
So the man has cleaned up his act. He's gotten his life together. He's stopped the bad habits. But he hasn't moved anyone new in.
This is the critical distinction between moral reformation and spiritual regeneration.
Yeah.
The Pharisees were the absolute masters of sweeping the house. They had lists of rules, they had rituals, they avoided unclean things. Their lives were meticulously ordered on the outside.
But inside.
But they were spiritually vacant. They were empty. They hadn't invited the Spirit of God to take up residence.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
And spiritual vacuums are incredibly dangerous. If you clear out the vice, but you don't fill that space with virtue, specifically, with the person of Christ and the Holy Spirit, the enemy will come back. And Jesus says he doesn't come back alone.
He brings friends.
He brings 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. The last state of that person is worse than the first. It's a terrifying picture of relapse.
Now, how does this apply to the nation of Israel at that time? Because Jesus specifically calls them this wicked generation, he makes it a national application.
Think about their history. After the Babylonian exile, the nation of Israel was, for the most part, cured of blatant idolatry.
Right, they learned that lesson.
They swept the national house clean. You never see a Jew bowing down to a golden calf in the first century. They were fiercely monotheistic, rigid, and clean according to their laws. But when the Messiah, the rightful occupant of the house, came to fill it,
They locked the door.
they rejected him. The house remained empty. And the judgment that followed, the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, was the 7 times worse reality. It was a national catastrophe that eclipsed even the Babylonian exile.
That is a very, very heavy warning. And right in the middle of this intense, heavy teaching, we get this very human interruption. Luke includes it. A woman in the crowd just yells out.
I love this moment in Luke 11:27. It just breaks the tension. She's probably a mother. She's watching Jesus dismantle the greatest minds of her nation, and she's just overcome with admiration. And she shouts, "Blessed is the womb that bore you and the breasts that nursed you."
It's a very Middle Eastern compliment. I mean, she's basically saying, your mom must be the proudest woman on earth. She's focusing on the biological connection, the family honor.
Right. And Jesus' response is so important. He pivots immediately. He doesn't deny Mary's blessedness. Luke establishes clearly in chapter 1 that Mary is indeed blessed among women, but he redefines the source of true blessedness.
What does he say?
He says, "Blessed rather are those who hear the word of God and keep it."
He's moving the goalposts from DNA to obedience, from biology to belief.
Exactly. He's democratizing blessedness. He's saying that spiritual proximity to God isn't about who your parents are or your ethnicity or your cultural heritage. It's about keeping the word. And that connects right back to the empty house parable, doesn't it?
How so?
How do you keep the demon from coming back? How do you keep the house from staying empty? You fill it. You fill it with the word of God. You hear it and you keep it. That's the occupation.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's move to movement 3, the Sign of Jonah. The Pharisees are back, and now they are making a specific demand. They want a sign.
Which is just dripping with irony, considering they just watched him cast out a demon from a blind and mute man.
Right. What more do you need?
But the Greek in Lick's account implies they want a semeion ex aranu, a sign from heaven.
What's the difference? A sign is a sign, isn't it?
Not to them. A healing is a sign on earth. An exorcism is a sign on earth. They want cosmic special effects. They want him to stop the sun in the sky like Joshua did, or call down fire from heaven like Elijah.
They want a spectacle.
They want a spectacle that fits their theological box and proves he has the backing of the sky god, not just some, earthly power over demons and disease. They want to dictate the terms of the proof.
And Jesus refuses. He calls them an evil and adulterous generation. That's incredibly strong language.
It's covenant language.
Yeah.
It's deeply theological. In the Old Testament, think of the prophets Hosea or Jeremiah God as the husband, and the nation of Israel as the bride. When Israel chased after other gods, the prophets called it adultery.
Spiritual unfaithfulness.
That's it. Jesus is saying that their demand for a different sign isn't an honest inquiry. It's proof of their unfaithfulness. They're cheating on the God of Israel by rejecting the very one God sent to them.
So he refuses to do a parlor trick, but he gives them one sign, the sign of Jonah. Now, we all know the Sunday school version, Jonah and the whale, or the great fish.
Right. And Jesus starts with that typology. It's a direct parallel. As Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.
He's directly predicting his own death and resurrection.
It is the ultimate sign. He's staking his entire claim on it. Think about it. Anyone can do a magic trick. Anyone can be a clever teacher. But coming back from the dead after 3 days of being certifiably dead, that is the ultimate seal of divine authenticity.
It's the one thing that can't be faked.
Exactly. If he stays dead, the Pharisees were right all along. He was just a man. But if he walks out of that tomb, he is the king. This is also a subtle hint at his identity as the Son of Man, which is a title from Daniel 7, a cosmic figure who receives the everlasting kingdom from the Ancient of Days.
But there's a second layer to the Jonah reference, right? It's not just about the fish. It's about what Jonah did after the fish. It's about the Ninevites.
And this is the sting in the tail of the sign. This is the part that would have made his audience deeply uncomfortable. Jonah preached to the city of Nineveh.
And we have to remember who the Ninevites were.
Yes. Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. To a first-century Jew, the Assyrians were the historical boogeymen. They were the most brutal, violent enemies Israel had ever known. They were pagan, cruel, and utterly hated.
And when Jonah, this foreign prophet, preached to them,
They repented. The book of Jonah says the entire city put on sackcloth and ashes, from the king on his throne down to the animals in the field. And notice the contrast Jesus draws.
What's the contrast?
Jonah was a reluctant prophet. He hated the Ninevites and didn't want them to be saved. He didn't do any miracles for them. He just walked into town and basically said, 40 days and you're all going to die.
And that was enough. They believed him.
They repented with minimal light and a hostile messenger. And Jesus is saying, I am here. I am the light of the world. I am healing your sick. I'm raising your dead. I'm teaching with perfect wisdom and love. And you, the religious elite, the children of the covenant, refuse to repent.
It's a shaming comparison.
It is. And then he doubles down and brings in the Queen of Sheba, the Queen of the South.
Another Gentile.
Another Gentile. A woman. She traveled, by best estimates, about 1,200 miles. That's a months-long, dangerous caravan journey through the desert. For what? Just to hear Solomon's wisdom. She made a massive, life-altering effort to seek out truth.
And Jesus says, something greater than Solomon is here.
I mean, can you imagine the audacity of that statement to that audience? Solomon was the pinnacle of Jewish national glory. He built the temple. He wrote the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. He was wisdom personified. And Jesus is standing there, this carpenter from Nazareth, likely in dusty clothes, saying, I am the true wisdom. I am the true temple builder. And you won't even cross the street to believe in me.
So he's setting up this comparative judgment. He's saying these Gentiles, the Ninevites and the Queen of Sheba, they're going to stand up in the final court of law and condemn this generation of Israel.
Because they did more with less. That's the core principle. Responsibility is proportional to revelation. The Pharisees had the maximum possible revelation, God in the flesh standing in front of them, so their unbelief is utterly inexcusable.
This tension is just ratcheting up and up, which leads us to the final movement. And if you think it's been heated so far, it's about to get incredibly awkward. We are at a dinner party.
A very, very tense dinner party. Luke tells us a Pharisee invites Jesus to eat with him. Now, in the ancient Near East, table fellowship is sacred. It's a sign of friendship, of acceptance. It's a big deal.
And Jesus immediately, deliberately breaks the rules. The text says he did not first wash before dinner.
And we need to be really clear, this isn't about hygiene. Jesus didn't have muddy hands from gardening. This refers to the netilat yadayim, the ceremonial hand washing.
The ritual washing.
Yes, it was a ritual prescribed by the elders, not by Moses, to remove spiritual impurity that one might have contracted from being in the marketplace, brushing up against Gentiles. By skipping it, Jesus is deliberately provoking a confrontation. He's throwing down a gauntlet and challenging their entire definition of holiness.
The host is shocked, Luke says, and Jesus uses that shock to launch into the woes. This is the anatomy of hypocrisy. He starts with the cup and dish.
It's such a powerful metaphor. He says, you Pharisees, you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. It links right back to the empty house, doesn't it?
It does. It's the same theme.
They're obsessed with the surface, the reputation, the appearance of piety, the external rituals. But the vessel itself, the heart, contains rot and robbery.
Then he goes after their tithing practices. He specifically mentions mint and rue and every herb.
This is such a specific, detailed criticism. Imagine having a little herb garden and painstakingly counting out every 10th mint leaf to give to the temple. It shows an almost pathological obsession with the minutiae of the law.
But isn't tithing a good thing? Isn't that commanded?
Tithing is fine, yes, and Jesus even says they shouldn't neglect it. But he points out the gross imbalance. He says, you tithe the tiny herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. They were majoring in the absolute minors. They were, in another passage, straining out a gnat, avoiding a tiny, ritually unclean insect, but swallowing a camel, completely ignoring the massive moral imperatives of the law. It's religion without humanity, without a soul. Then he brings up the metaphor of the hidden graves. This one feels particularly biting.
It's devastating. Under the law in Numbers 19, if you accidentally touched a human bone or walked over a grave, even if you didn't know it was there, you became ceremonially unclean for 7 days. You were cut off from the community and the temple.
So they would mark the graves to prevent that.
Yes. Tombs were often whitewashed with lime so people would see them, especially around festival times, and could avoid them and maintain their ritual purity.
But Jesus calls the Pharisees unmarked graves, hidden graves. He's saying, you look clean, you look holy, you look like safe ground to walk on. So people come to you for spiritual guidance. They get close to you. But because you are spiritually dead inside, you are actually defiling everyone you touch. without them even knowing it.
Wow.
They are spreading spiritual contamination while posing as the solution to it. It's an absolutely brutal indictment.
And at this point, a lawyer speaks up. And we should clarify, a lawyer here isn't a courtroom attorney with a briefcase.
No. This is JonahEmmaus, an expert in the Torah, a theologian, a scribe. He's one of the academics of the group. And he says, "Teacher, in saying these things, you insult us also." He's offended. He feels the heat.
And Jesus basically says, hold my drink. I've got plenty for you too.
He absolutely doubles down. Woe to you lawyers as well. Yep. And he hits them with 3 specific charges. First, they are burden makers. They create these heavy, complex interpretations of the law. The Talmud would later record thousands of them that make life unbearable for the common person. But they always create loopholes for themselves. They don't lift a finger to help people carry the weight they've created.
They're gatekeepers. And second, he calls them prophet killers.
This is a historical indictment that cuts to the bone. He says, you build tombs for the prophets your fathers killed. It's easy to honor a dead prophet. A dead prophet is safe.
Right. They can't yell at you.
Dead prophets don't call out your sin. They don't challenge your power structures. You can put a beautiful monument on their grave and feel very pious about it.
But Jesus says that by building the tombs, they are admitting they are the sons of the murderers. They're of the same stock.
And he connects the dots right to the present moment. He says, you honor the dead ones while you are actively plotting to kill the living prophet who is sitting right here at your dinner table. He then sweeps across all of salvation history, mentioning the blood of Abel, the first martyr in Genesis, to the blood of Zechariah, a prophet stoned in the temple court in 2 Chronicles.
That's the A to Z of the Hebrew Bible's canon at the time.
Exactly. He is charging them with the entire blood-soaked history of Israel's rejection of God's messengers.
And the final charge, the key of knowledge.
This might be the most tragic of all. You have taken away the key of knowledge. The job of the theologian, the scribe, was to be a locksmith, to unlock the door of Scripture, to make God's truth accessible to the people. Instead, they made it so complex, so buried in tradition, so exclusive, that they effectively locked the people out.
And the worst part?
The worst part is, they didn't enter the kingdom themselves. They stood outside the door, holding the key, and they actively hindered anyone who was trying to get in. They were the bouncers at the door of the kingdom, keeping everyone out, including themselves.
The text says that after this, the scribes and Pharisees began to oppose him fiercely and to lie in wait for him, trying to catch him in something he said.
The mask is completely gone. The pretense of polite theological inquiry is over. Now it's a hunt. They aren't trying to understand him anymore. They're looking for a soundbite, a phrase they can twist, any word they can use to have him arrested and executed.
It's a chilling ending to the dinner party.
Yeah.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground here on this one day. Let's bring our stereoscopic lenses back together to synthesize this. What have we seen?
If we look through Matthew's lens, we see the king drawing a non-negotiable line in the sand.
Yeah.
He has bound the strong man. He is plundering the enemy's kingdom. You're either with him, gathering for his kingdom, or you are committing treason against it.
Through Mark's lens.
We see the servant, misunderstood by his own family, hated by the religious leaders, physically exhausted, yet continuing to plunder Satan's house. He just keeps working. He keeps serving. He keeps saving captives. Through Luke's lens, we see the perfect man expose the utter emptiness of religion without love. He has logically dismantled their arguments and then exposed the internal corruption of their hearts. He calls for a heart that is internally cleansed and filled by the word, not just externally washed by ritual.
And finally, John, the overarching thematic lens.
Through John's framework, Jesus is the light that has come into the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend it. He is the something greater. He's greater than Solomon's wisdom, greater than Jonah's prophetic sign. He is divine wisdom and divine life standing in their midst, and that presence forces a decision.
So let's bring this home. For the listener today, why does this 2,000-year-old conflict matter? We aren't Pharisees. Most of us aren't professional exorcists. What's the takeaway?
I think the empty house is the critical takeaway for the modern age. We're absolutely obsessed with self-improvement, aren't we?
Completely. The whole self-help industry.
I want to be more productive. I want to be less angry. I want to stop scrolling on my phone. That's all sweeping the house. It's cleaning up. And it's not bad, but it's not the point.
But Jesus says that's not enough. In fact, it's dangerous.
It's profoundly dangerous.
Yeah.
You can have a moral, organized, disciplined, clean life that is completely godless. And that spiritual vacuum leaves you vulnerable to something worse rushing in to fill the void. The goal isn't just to be better. The goal is to be occupied, to have the stronger man Jesus take up permanent residence in the house.
And there's a massive encouragement here too, isn't there? In the midst of all this spiritual warfare, the war is, in a sense, effectively over.
That's the strongman point. That's the hope. We often feel like we are fighting for victory against sin or evil.
Yeah.
But Jesus' parable says he has already bound the strongman. The decisive battle has been won. The king has the keys. We are now fighting from a position of victory. The enemy is on a leash.
That changes the whole dynamic of how we live our daily lives, our struggles.
It changes everything. It turns fear into faith.
So here is your final thought to chew on this week. Jesus drew a hard binary line. He who is not with me is against me. He who does not gather with me scatters. Look at your life this week. Look at your conversations, your social media posts, your interactions at work and at home. Are you gathering? Are you bringing people toward restoration, toward hope, toward the kingdom? Or are you, maybe unintentionally, scattering through division, through cynicism, or just through apathy?
Because there really is no neutral ground.
The king is here. Make sure your house is occupied. Thanks for diving up with us. We'll see you next time.